Welcome back to the Media7 Spa the Conference special. Different governments do broadcasting policy different ways and to different degrees. In a special source for this program, Sam Mulgrew counts the money.
After 85 years on the job, the BBC continues to pump out ad-free public service broadcasting.
This is BBC Television.
It asks the hard questions.
Think of it from the American point of view. If oil goes up to $200 a barrel, what's that going to do to the US economy?
And some other ones too.
What's wrong? Usual stuff. All my family hate me.
But the BBC Charter keeps it all honest, handed down on marble tablets by Daddy BBC, Lord Reith.
To inform, to educate, to entertain.
The British TV licence fee brings in nearly $7 billion a year, about $300 per household. Across the channel, President Nicolas Sarkozy is strengthening the public service, banning ads at night on 5 public channels and boosting political discussion. Now just 12% of funding is commercial. But we're different, thank you very much. The public may own TVNZ, but with 90% of income from ad revenue, it's not a public service broadcaster.
The nectar of the god!
In fact, in an independent review of broadcasting in 18 developed nations, New Zealand public broadcasting had the most reliance on commercial money. And in terms of per capita governmental support, our funding body, New Zealand On Air, receives one of the lowest amounts. $53 per Kiwi, about half the comparative average per capita support. In the last financial year, Sky New Zealand reported a $120 million profit, while TVNZ's was $2 million. But the national broadcaster would still look pretty snazzy on the market. Its charter has been scrapped, as will the ad-free TVNZ7 next year. Commercial interests on our airwaves have never been more powerful.
Sam Mulgrew there. Well, as promised, I'm joined now by the Minister of Broadcasting, Jonathan Coleman. Welcome, Minister. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.
Now, this isn't your first Spa the Conference, and from the stage at last year's conference, you seem to make your position fairly clear. TV1 and TV2 should focus on commercial goals, and TVNZ7 should carry the public service obligation.
That's not actually correct.
What did you say?
What I said was there were a range of options which the Cabinet would consider, and that might range from what you've outlined there and some sort of synergy being achieved with Radio New Zealand. I said that could be across the spectrum, right through to do we take all the money and just make it competitive and put it through New Zealand?
Yet my recollection and that of others at the conference was that your preference was for continued funding of TVNZ7, and that would carry the public service obligation.
So I knew you would ask me this, so I read the transcript this afternoon, and it's as I've just outlined to you. So what we did, we went away as a Cabinet, we talked through the options. We knew we were in a difficult fiscal situation, and we thought, how can we continue to fund excellent public broadcasting content? And in the end, for a small nation in difficult financial circumstances, we figured that for public service television, the best thing to do was to take that money and put it through television, through New Zealand On Air, to make sure that the best products made it to the screen and had a chance to compete, rather than soaking up money in behind-the-scenes functions. We want to get programs on the screen.
I have to say, the popular perception is that you put the case for continued funding to the Prime Minister. He was sympathetic, and Stephen Joyce overruled it.
Certainly the Labour Party say that, but of course you would expect them to. But look, we have closed discussions in the Cabinet, and my view on it is we've come up with the best possible solution. And quite frankly, we're getting a lot of good feedback on it. Obviously, there's a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily be happy with it, but you know, in government, we've had to make some very tough decisions. We're not going to borrow more and more money to fritter away on promises. We're saying, this is the money we've got. How can we best use it? And for a small country, we've got $81 million for a contestable TV fund.
Yeah, I know.
Radio New Zealand,
we're a small economy, times are tight, but
it's pretty good overall.
Are you saying here that the case for a public broadcaster, a public service broadcaster, is now lost. There is no prospect of this happening.
Yeah, I've said we've had a long debate over this over the last 3 years. I've talked to a whole range of people, some who've agreed, some who haven't, but we've made our decisions. We've set our stall out very clearly. We've released our broadcasting policy today, and we're saying the best use of the money in New Zealand is going to be to put it through New Zealand On Air.
Is it the case that in the original business case that TVNZ took to the government for the funding of 6 and 7, buried deep down there was a proposal for the channels to become self-funding via a must-offer, must-pay retransmission regime?
No, that's not my recollection of it, quite frankly.
I understand that is actually what was in the business case.
That's not my recollection of it at all. What I do recollect is that we discussed a whole range of options, but in the end, TVNZ didn't have any more money that they were prepared to put into it. We certainly didn't have more money that we were going to put into it.
We know you've got no money, but did you discuss a retransmission regime, a must-offer, must-pay?
I looked at all options over a long period of time, but I don't recall TVNZ putting that on the table to us as part of the business case.
At a public meeting in Auckland this year, I heard you say, we will not be regulating Sky. Is that still the case?
That is the case.
Will that remain the case if the Commerce Commission comes back from its study and says, we think there is a problem here?
Well, what the Commerce Commission is doing, they're obviously doing their study now. They're going to be putting out a discussion paper which comes back in February. So they will be making a series of broad conclusions and recommendations. It's totally non-binding. They'll be putting that out for submission. We'll see what comes back from that. But as I've said to you on past occasions, it isn't our intention to regulate Sky. There's a whole raft of reasons behind that. But look, essentially, Sky came here. They made losses for many years. They've got a business model which they've stuck with. They're now making profits. We're not going to say to businesses, come to New Zealand, start a business, but if you get too successful, we're going to regulate you, because we don't think that's actually a good signal to send out there.
They have a business model which would be illegal in many other countries. Let me walk you through a Sky reseller contract. If I want to offer a broadcasting service, say, via broadband, and I go to Sky, I get a reseller contract, I have to broadcast everything in the bundles dictated by Sky. I pay pretty much retail for that. And if I decide I want more on my new service, say I want a bullfighting channel from Spain, I've found someone who will supply that to me. If I go and talk to that rights holder, Sky has the right under these reseller contracts to, within 90 days, take all of my subscribers.
Well, I'm not sure if that's actually the case. We're getting into the minutiae here, but you're talking about what happens overseas.
That would be illegal in Europe.
Well, it may, lots of things might be legal or illegal in one jurisdiction or another. But what I'm saying is, in the New Zealand situation, we're comfortable with the regime we've got here. Obviously competition law applies. And we had advice early on when we looked at Labour's review of the broadcasting environment. MED saw no competition issues. MCH said, well, look, there could be some in the future. There aren't any now. So we've looked at it, and we are confident that
you're comfortable
the
with
regime
it, even though it would not be permitted
works
under
well
the
for New Zealand.
Telecommunications Act.
Well, look, if it's illegal under the Telecommunications Act, I wonder why a case hasn't been taken.
Well, we may well see that.
Well, why is that, Russell? No, seriously. If it is illegal, why hasn't anyone taken a case?
You may well see that next year, because Sky has these contracts with telecommunications companies. Just finally, Michael Steedman offered the view in his speech that Sky has an unhealthy dominance over the broadcast industry here. It contributes virtually nothing and is basically a destructive force. Why is he wrong?
Look, Michael Steedman gave an interesting speech yesterday. He's a highly respected person in the industry. He expressed a range of views, some of which I think were actually a little bit contradictory. But one point I really did take out of it, and I will quote it to you, is he said, "You adapt or die. Many of our competitors failed to adapt to a rapidly changing television landscape and are now extinct." And I think you've got to look to the future, the way the technology is changing, the way the landscape has changed, and what is the best way to survive in that landscape. You cannot turn back the clock. We've got a unique set of circumstances in New Zealand, and frankly, I think a lot of producers, a lot of people in the industry are getting on, looking to the future and looking at how they can make the best of it.
And your policy set in stone. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you very much, Russell.
Coming up, 3 wise men weigh up what's just been said.